Okay, room curves, specifically for the subwoofer channel, a house curve, how I see it and how I deal with it when I calibrate my subwoofer. I pretty much do it based off of the response of the original measurement. So the original measurement would have been this blue one here. What I do is I essentially normalize the volume to get an idea really of how much this peaks. Because this curve that's actually happening here is a lot of the influence from, or issues with the room, say here and here, are starting to actually let go. And the room is now just simply boosting the frequency response significantly. But how do we actually see how much this is? One way, and I've been thinking about this lately as well, is like normalizing volume just to see how much things rise by. So one thing you can do is I could make this really simple and set this to 0 dB. That might be the best thing to do, because then we can truly see what things are being risen by in the response. So if you normalize this, actually I should explain what I'm doing here. So you can SPL align here, and I've SPL aligned to 0 dB, which would be about here. That would be the average point. And what I do is I align the center frequency to 50. You can use other ones like 40 or even 63, as long as they are in the range of the subwoofer and you feel as though the response that you're getting is accurate for your room. But for this response, say, 50, you align at 50 and you use a 1 octave. Now what that means is 1 octave above 50 is 100 Hertz and 1 octave below is 25. That really does give you a good that range is very good. You know, that is a subwoofer range typically. Now I know they go on further down to 20 Hertz, down to 18 to 15. Chances are though, from what I'm seeing in responses, the peak doesn't keep rising. At least every response I've seen, you get to around 30 Hertz, around there, you hit your peak. I mean, mine hits at 25, and then it continues then onwards. I haven't seen a response that continues to rise. So this is a good range as well to get the information that we need. So yeah, so you align to 0. This normalizes the volume just so we can see numbers, and things are very easy to understand then at this point. Again, we align to 50, and we have 100 and then a 25. So it's a good range. So we'd press OK. You can align, by the way, to other numbers like 90, 80 or 70. And you are then, because that's what I do, and you can see what it's being risen by again. Hey, we're at 70 on average, and then what is it being risen by? But I just want to show it in this way, just so it is truly easy to understand. So what we do here is we hold left click on the mouse here, and down here is the target, or not the target, sorry, it's the actual volume now of what is being raised by the subwoofer in this response. This is 2 subwoofers playing at exactly the same time. They are impulse time aligned, and I did that for a reason, is because I didn't want to time align them yet to fix this or anything like that. I just want them to play at the same time, and I want to know what the response is in the room without any time alignment, because once you start time alignment, these will probably come down and this will go up, and potentially the average response may change. So this is why I do this all before I work out what it is before. So again, I'm always looking at this number, and again, we're normalized to 0 dB. We're on the 0 dB line here. We can get rid of this. So this is the average volume here, which is 0 from the entire response. But we really want to see what is the subwoofer rising by. So now you're holding left click, 8.1, 8, 8.1, 8.2, 7.9, so we're going down now. 7, 7, 8.1, 8.2. So 8.2, we're rising by 8.2. Now I don't get too into the weeds on this. I would consider that an 8 dB rise. I'm not, you know, going into Mini-DSP, and I'm not going into MultEQ-X and putting 8.2. For me, that is an 8 dB rise. And another thing, what I used to do, or I have been trying lately as well, is creating a response in the EQ section here based on only raising to 25. I've done that, and it actually kind of sounds flat doing that, and I'll explain in a minute how to deal with all this to create the target curves and create. We'll do it in Mini-DSP. That'd be the easiest way. I could do the EQ way first, actually. Let's do that first. So yeah, we have a response here, and it rises by 8 dB. Now, can we mirror this in the EQ section here? First off, though, I'd like to talk about this low-pass filter for LFE right here. Now, if you EQ flat, and I mean complete flat line, like this would be completely flat. You would EQ everything down first. If you do that, you want to set this to 250 Hertz. I have seen YouTube videos where they're sweeping the mains, so they're like kind of unplugging their left and right channels, or they're putting the crossover up to 250 Hertz and then sweeping it that way, putting their speakers to small, and all that information then gets sent to the sub. That's actually fine because there's no filters involved then. The thing is, this 120 Hertz roll-off is a 6 dB roll-off from 80 Hertz. And if you EQ to flat, and then put your room curve in afterwards, and there's no roll-off after 80 Hertz, you're going to start localizing bass, and it's not going to sound good. This is in place for a reason. It's to stop bad mixes, for one. It's also very good if somebody has unfortunately made a mistake and they have put, say, dialogue in the 0.1 channel, which used to happen, by the way. In 5.1 DVD audio music, that has happened before. And, you know, look, mistakes have happened, but having this in place really does alleviate a lot of these problems of especially localizing bass. That is what this is for. So if you are not going to EQ to flat, then keep this at 120 Hertz. But if you do EQ to flat, then put it to 250 and then put it back in after you've calibrated. And then you'll see a proper 6 dB roll-off, which I'll show you at the end as well. So the method we're going to use now is an EQ way. So, and we're going to create the room curve in REW. So you would keep this at 120 Hertz. You don't want to actually change this yet. Well, you don't want to change it at all if you're doing it this way. So you'd come into the EQ section here. And I'm not on the right one, am I? Both? Yeah, both. We're at 0 dB. Yeah, it doesn't matter, like when you're EQing and that. What do I need to do here? Well, first off, we don't need any of this. The target, where is the target? 71. Okay, let's just put it to 0. Okay, here we go. So add room curve. Now this is just something I've been working with before, so let's just set these to 0, and we will set this to 0 for now. That's not a 0. Okay, so we're clean slate, and I want to take care of this low pass filter for LFE first. So the best thing to do here, this is actually how I used to set it up, or at least try, But the best thing to do actually here is to now set this to 80. And you also set this one to 80 as well, the fall start 80 as well. So they're both at 80 Hertz. Again, the reason this is important is because I want to create this roll-off that is happening in the receiver. It's really a way of making sure when I EQ, there's no signals from 80 Hertz to 120 that are above that line. If they are, then you will start to localize some of this bass. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos, I've seen a lot of AVS forum videos, and what they do is they don't take care of this, and they let there's a rise, say, from 80 Hertz to, say, 30, right? Or 100, and then the line is just flat. And in my opinion, you can't do that, because you start to, if there's any signals there going over that line or around there, you will actually localize it and hear it. So number one, I want to take care of this first. So how do we do this? So you can click, we have full screen here. So my camera is here, but you should be able to see this number. That number is 0 dB, right? This is across the board entirely. This is great. So what I want to do here is to click anywhere that is 80 or below. We can do 79. That's completely fine. So changing this slope here, I'm still at 0 dB here. So again, at 80 Hertz, I would still be at 0 dB. So what we actually want to do is mimic this roll-off that's happening in the receiver. So let's click over 120 Hertz, 0.3, that's fine, we're close enough, right? So again, this number is negative 1.8, but we want to mimic the 6 dB roll-off, so let's just keep coming down. 5 and 6. So there. That is a low pass filter for LFE. That is what is in place. And in my opinion, every single EQ should have this. If they are EQing this way, if they're EQing not flat, but they're actually EQing to their target, to an actual room curve in REW, that is to me how you want to take care of this. If you've ever had issues with localizing bass and you didn't know how to deal with it, this to me is how you deal with it. So that is that for me taken care of. No more issues with being able to localize bass or anything like that. As soon as I took care of this issue, EQing this way, I could not hear and localize any bass. I was like, yes, that's taken care of. So next, what we want to do is the 8 dB rise. So that's, again, pretty simple. So what I want to do, though, is my response was to 25 Hertz. But again, I've heard that. To me, it almost sounds too flat. Like, I want a bit more juice. I want my bass to rise earlier instead of later. Another thing is, if you've seen a lot of BEQ movie frequency responses, most movies hit their peak at 30 Hertz. So yes, we've got our original subwoofer, and do we want to deviate too much away from that? But we're EQing, right? We are deviating away from what the subwoofer is originally sounding like. Some of them can sound really bad, and others sound good. Mine doesn't particularly sound good, but once it's EQ'd, it sounds absolutely incredible. So in effect, we're becoming a designer here. We're redesigning the subwoofer in some ways to sound really as good as we can. So, yes, my true peak was 25 Hertz, but again, I have heard it, and I feel as though it is a little too flat. And again, now thinking about movies as well, a lot of action movies hit true peak at around 30 Hertz. So that is, to me, how I want to design this. So you can click anywhere over that is below 30. then we will know the true peak of what is actually happening here. So again, same thing. So this is an 8 dB rise. Gone way too far. 8 dB rise. So I can't go 8. I'm fine with a 7.9 if this is potentially even aggressive. Because one thing to think about is this was aligned to 100 hertz as well, right? So it was at 50, so 1 octave above that is 100, which is starting to roll off as well from 80 to the 100 point. That's like 3 dB. That's a 3 dB roll off right there. That is just like some things to think about. So you don't have to be maybe so clinical here about getting a true like 8 dB rise from 80 hertz. It may not have been that. From 100 hertz, yes, it was an 8 dB rise, but from there, it may not have been. A couple of things maybe to consider. I'm not quite sure how to work that out, to be totally honest with you. One thing though you could do is to think about here, is to take now this then into consideration. So if we've clicked here over 100 hertz, which is 99.6, close enough, it's 3 dB, which is as expected. It should be a 3 dB. So you could take this into account, this 3 dB. Then this would actually only be a 5 dB rise, right? So for the 80 hertz portion, that's just a 5 dB rise. Because 8 dB, again, from just the 80 hertz point, may be a pinch on the aggressive side. Just some things to think about. If you could try both, right? And again, this is really up to you how you want your subs to actually sound. With how much bass or how deep you want your sound to be. One thing to think about, talking about this, between 5 and even 8 here. Let's go back up to 8. When you take an SPL meter reading, I'm changing this. What am I? There we go. When you take an SPL reading, the center point of pink noise for the subwoofer channel is 55 hertz. Because pink noise from an LFE channel is from 80 to 30 hertz. So the midpoint is 55. Now, if you think about this, that's like right there. So 55, that would be around 75 dB, right? Because you're taking the entire average of this low point and this high point, and the midpoint would be in that range. So you're going to have like from that's 3.1, and that would be basically 8. So the difference between 55 and say 30 hertz is a big jump. Doing it this EQ this way, designing the room curve in here, I'm just not sure, because basically what I'm trying to get at here is that you anchor too much bass into just this region. And there's good kick bass here in the 50s and the 60s and 70s. There's a lot of kick bass there, a lot of slam from movies. And if you're just anchoring too much bass here, you get deep bass. Yeah, it sounds really good. But some movies, like, let's just, for instance, say a Disney movie, right? A Disney movie does not anchor bass down here. It just simply does not, right? Now, maybe some of their new ones do, because they're not, like, compressing bass. That's a whole nother discussion. But let's say, like, 2016 to 2020 releases by Disney, they were compressing bass, yes, number one, but they were more than likely anchoring bass more here. And because this isn't as high as your main peak, when you listen to, like, say, a Marvel movie, again, anything by Disney, it doesn't have the slam that other movies have. again, it's just things to think about. So having this rise like this, it just may be too aggressive, is really what I'm trying to say here. And again, we're anchoring in this range. So if we went back to this the other way, where were we? 100 hertz. That's the 3 dB. So 5. So a 5. That is an 8 dB rise from 100 hertz to this point. And that really was the range that we were using as well. And this gives more opportunity for movies that, look, we don't always use slam at this range, like 40 to 30 hertz. There's also stuff here to be heard, and there is a bit more balance to be had then. So again, just things to think about. For now though, let's just design it wrong way. Let's just design it with an 8 dB rise. Again, this is aggressive, but this can kind of really be our target now. So two different ways of really thinking about it, of like, hey, how much bass should we be really rising by? And the normalized thing that we did in the octaves and trying to work out an average volume, where was the ranges from? Oh yeah, they were from 100 and they were to 25, right? So this, again, just things to think about. Because one thing I did do is I've EQ'd this way and I've EQ'd the flat way, and this way felt like slightly too aggressive and thick on bass. And I think it was about this discussion that I was just like talking about here, and that is, maybe I'm not taking this into account, so this entire curve from, say, 100 hertz to this point. So again, things to think about. What you can do though is you can generate measurement from target shape now, which puts this on the screen. It's not the best color, so let's change that. All right, yeah. Okay, so it puts it on screen, so it gives us also like a way of, a target to look for with another method as well. So let's take this off the screen for a minute now. And the other way of doing this is in Mini-DSP and MultEQ-X. And that is now EQing this to flat. So let's actually take the room curve out and just generate measurement from target shape. Right, so we have literally, what we do now is, this is an imaginary EQ, but we have EQ'd this to flat, right? And it's the best EQ you've ever seen, but but normally I EQ to flat, and it is kind of wavy, but it's within probably 1 to 2 dB of the target, and this is now with this setting set to 250 hertz, and we've EQ'd flat, right? We've put the target to flat. Everything is flat. We've took the room out of the equation, and we're going to put everything in back afterwards. So then what you do, all the EQ work then would be done. You would now set this back to 120 hertz, and so we can take this off now. So I've got to find some stuff now. So where are I haven't normalized everything. Okay. So now this does have a room curve applied, but I want to give you an idea of what this setting actually does as well. So let's normalize this down to 0. Now, how do we do this? 80. I'm not going to use an octave. So what this would do would be to put the center alignment exactly at 80 hertz, and that is good. So 80 hertz will be at 0. Then I can see exactly what this low pass filter for LFE is doing. So again, 80 hertz. We're at 0 dB, right? Both of them, both are at 0 dB because that's what we're aligned to, with no octaves whatsoever. Again, so this is really good. So now what we can do here is we click over 120 hertz, and the flat one is, this says negative 1.2, but this is like the, this is just EQ. If it was again, if it was a perfect line, it would just say 0. So yeah, that's just the nature of like the response and things like that. So that's why that's out. But the green one here, 200 with 120 hertz roll off applied, with that applied, this is now how much it is actually rolling bass off. Let's smooth that. And it's reading 5.1. I believe it's supposed to be exactly 6 dB. You know, room influences, you know, anything can really cause that. But I have consistently seen that. It's actually around 5.1, around there. And that's the roll-off. But this does make it so you can't hear anything audible. Or say a kick drum, you can't place it from the subs. Once I start being able to hear where those drums are coming in the subwoofer channel, you know, I'd start to cringe a little. I just can't hear it. I don't like the sound of it. And on a slightly different subject as well is like speaker crossovers. I like the sound of 80 hertz because it is very similar actually to the roll-off in this channel. The roll-off is starting at 80 hertz down to 120. And the crossover again is, well, it doesn't actually start at 80 hertz, but we're crossing over into 80 hertz from the speakers to the subs. And this is, because I've always wondered why, once you get this right, the speakers sound right as well. Like, and it's because they're using a very similar in some ways crossover. They're both to actually the same point. Both start at the same point. Now, once you start raising this crossover, say like you have small speakers, and the first thing you think to do is, well, I have small speakers, I'm going to raise my crossover. Let's just say you raised it to 120 hertz. Well, the issue with that is you are going to localize the bass in the subs now. And you've just heard an explosion behind you in your surrounds, but half of the sound come from the front. And because you can localize that bass, it just doesn't sound, to me, that doesn't sound good. Even if I had speakers that didn't go down to 80 hertz, I would still set the receiver to 80 hertz. And one reason why is it sounds better. to me, bass just simply sounds better that way. I don't want to localize the bass anyway. You know, sure, you are missing a little bit of bass from the rears, right? But that's the way I would deal with it. Luckily, my speakers are bass heavy. I have the E-Lake Unify speakers, the first generation, and the first generations, not the 2.0s, the first generations they've got tons of bass. That is actually a benefit in when you start to EQ them, because they've got so much bass, you can actually bring them down. It's so good, actually. But crossing over on these speakers, every single speaker, all my Atmos speakers at 80 hertz, it's perfect. They actually go down to 60, but I still cross over at 80 because you want to get signals going in, bass signals going to your subs over your mains. I don't care how expensive the mains are, right? I don't care if they're $20,000 speakers. I just don't. Subwoofers couple better and produce better and smoother bass. A lot of people go out of their way with Mini-DSP and MultEQ-X here to really calibrate the subwoofer channel, and that resolution and detail you do not go into with mains. You don't. Speakers, in my opinion, and subwoofers, talking about this, should scale in price, right? So if you have $20,000 speakers, then you should probably have two $10,000 subs. But chances are, if you're spending $20,000 on speakers, you're probably going to have 4 subs then at that point. 4 $10,000 subs, okay. But if you've got 4 $10,000 subs, right, and you bought a $20,000 speaker, two mains that $20,000 speakers. Again, I don't care how much they cost. They are not as good as bass as the equivalent in cost of the subwoofers. Subwoofers are going to smooth out much better bass in that way. I've used LFE plus main before, and in the end, I got much better bass when I crossed over at 80 hertz. I set my speakers to small, and the subwoofers take care of this. That's just my opinion, right? So price has nothing to do with it. Speakers will always be set to small for me, because equivalently priced subwoofers will always do a better job than mains, floor standards. They always will. Yeah, a little sidetrack there. So crossovers, yeah. So yeah, this is what it looks like. This is with the 120 hertz applied. So targets, let's actually look here, targets. And yeah, as you can see, this is basically what I was doing, right? So the 120 hertz is applied, like my target in the EQ section. So again, this is a great guide. And we were raising bass, or putting the room back into the subwoofer here, up to 30 hertz, and 30 hertz is our peak. And now we are going to roll off here. This is after. I assume this is after a low pass filter that's been applied. Yeah, it has to be, because I use a low pass filter to basically save my subs from blowing up, basically. Yeah. So sorry, how do we actually create this, say in Mini-DSP or MultEQ-X? So MultEQ-X, I'm not going to load my file or anything like that. So we can go in. We can remove these. Yes, you can remove these. Mid-range compensation and the roll-off. Nope. That's going right away. That's the first thing I delete when I load up Audyssey using MultEQ-X, the app. So you got a bi-quad parametric EQs here. And one thing I've really discovered, though, is you don't need the Q. This is a low shelf with Q. You actually don't need the Q unless you are raising your bass by more than 8. If you are, then you might need a different Q, and I'll show you on Mini-DSP. But here, if you use a second order, wait, where is the low shelf? Second order. Is there one? I'm not seeing it right now. It doesn't matter. Anyway, if there isn't with Q, this would be typically set to 0.7. 63, and then a gain of 8. Yeah, that's 8. The big problem with MultEQ-X is you can't really see, like you can't mouse over your frequencies here. This is being set to all channels. You can set this to just the subwoofer channel. You can also, in MultEQ-X now, disable auto leveling. You get this override warning. You couldn't actually EQ with MultEQ-X before this in the subwoofer channel. So they actually added this to disable the auto leveling. Now you can get true, whatever you put in, you'll get out. So yeah, because that was a serious problem. And I couldn't move on from saying Mini-DSP without that change. So, okay. So Mini-DSP, let's show you a Mini-DSP. And Mini-DSP is great because it can show you where things are rising by. So this is the room curve that I want to apply. That will give me this green response here, and it is a Q of 7, a gain of 8, which we knew we was going to put in anyway, and I've chosen 63, and the reason I have, there's just one reason. You keep mousing over here. Our gain, we want to reach a gain of 8. So right here, the bottom number here says a gain of 6, and the top number there says 47. Well, we want to get to 30, so we're still at a gain of 7. So we're close. 35, we're still 7, 32, 31. And as soon as we hit 30 hertz there, we reach the full peak of this. Now, a couple of things to be said is I spent a lot of time talking about not being able to hear frequencies because of this roll-off. Luckily, a 0.7 Q seems to roll off perfectly with this as well. I actually tested it today on my new calibration because I've just got a UMIC 2 and I've recalibrated the subs, and one thing I noticed was there still this is a 6 dB roll-off. So with this applied, look, some of these signals, look, +1 at 105 hertz, 110 hertz 1 dB, 120 hertz 1 dB. Then we go to 0. So there is once we get to the 0.1 channel, we are actually starting to rise there. Some of these are potentially local. They're localizable frequencies. However, this change, this rise here with a Q of 7 is actually quite light, and again somehow it just maps onto that curve beautifully. Because again, I measured it, even with this applied, I still had a 6 dB roll-off. I was like, wow, that's nice that this really doesn't have an impact. It's not, it's so light that it's really just not having the impact whatsoever. And we get a rise of exactly at 30 hertz. And that's exactly what I want. I want to hit my true peak in the signal, in the gain at that point. So now that's how I would do an 8 dB rise. But let's say you said to me, well, I have a 9 dB rise and this isn't the same, because it isn't. So let's actually change this to 9 dB, because you told me, hey, I've got a room with 9 dB rise. Do I still keep the frequency at 63? And do you still keep the Q at 0.7? This is a good question. So this at 32 hertz, we've already. This is 8. Okay. Oh, so we're at 9 dB gain here, 63, and we don't hit full peak at 80. We're still at 8. That means though this has to come down, or sorry, up. Yeah, up. I don't know by how much though. So 40 hertz is an 8 dB gain. 31 I hit 9. So let's go down now, 67. 31 is 9. 66. 31 is 8. And now 31 is 9. 30 is 9. So the numbers are not the same, because the impact on the actual low shelf you have to just see how it impacts. So a 9 dB gain is not gonna be the same frequency as that. So the goal again is to get to your peak always of 30 hertz at your maximum peak. Now the problem here is that mine was previously set to 63. Now we're at 66, and I've demoed this on my system, and I put a 9 dB gain in, and I had to set the frequency to 66. I put on Tenet. I always put on Tenet because there's a lot of bass that Christopher Nolan puts into the mains as well as the subs. And can I localize any bass? Once I went from 8 dB or an 8 dB gain here to 9, and I had to change the frequency to 66, I started to feel as though I localized some bass. And these gains here, though they are small, like 1 dBs, it's still happening at like 141 hertz. And this is just something now to think about. Once I see this, like that's the thing, you kind of have to like, maybe there's a rule of thumb, like once you go beyond 120 hertz, because I think the one I was doing before with a gain of 8 and the 63, after 120 it's 0. So if you start boosting after 120, what you actually have to do now is redesign this Q or change this Q and make it tighter. We want to now tighten things. So we can change this from 0.7 to 8, and if you see there, I'll do it again. I'll go back. It really squeezes the frequencies in closer now. Now we have a steeper rise to think about. I'm not sure if this is, and again now I'd have to change this. So again, what was it? When do we hit 9? 38. So we need to come back down, which is good, because again we're putting, every time I click this frequency down, we're pushing this further away from these frequencies that we don't want to hear. But when do we hit 9? 59. No. Let's go 55 just to quickly do this. 9 at 31. I mean that's fine, right? But let's get like really. So 31. There we go. That's it. Again, just as you hit 30 hertz on these, if you see them on the screen here, 31 is an 8 dB gain, and as soon as you hit 30, it's 9. So that's how we take care of that. But we kind of have to see what is going on here. So we're at 120, we're at 0 dB. This would be completely fine, right? Because again, we're not boosting some of these other signals here by any amount that you could probably hear now. This is complete. I mean, we're at 0 dB at 93. So this changing the Q from 0.7 to 0.8 is actually a pretty significant change to do that. So, and again though, if you are using a 9 dB gain, we are anchoring a lot of bass into this area, and this is going to be like kind of low, right? You just have to think about that when you're making an SPL reading, where the average volume is coming from, and a lot of it is coming from this high-end 30 hertz, 40 hertz, 50 hertz range. You get incredible deep bass. But if someone's using bass in this area, you know, that is supposed to have slam, if it sounds too flat, you know, this gain could be too high, because again, we're thinking about average volumes here. So yeah, that again, depending on your gain, your room curve and things like that, that's how I would deal with this. Again, always look at both ends. Like, you want to hit full gain at 30, but how much information is going into this other stuff here? When do we actually start to rise? So we start to rise at 91 hertz. That's completely, I think that's completely fine. That's how I had to like change and edit a room curve that was 9 dB. I even did this today, just to try it. I personally still felt, again though, that 8 sounded better. this may be because it was based on my room. So it does not sound stretched. But this to me, 63 frequency, gain of 8, and a Q now of Q is 0.7. It has the deepness for a Christopher Nolan movie, but it also movies that don't have killer bass still sound good. I also demoed Maverick with these settings. Maverick with these settings is a reference bass experience. It is just perfect, absolutely perfect bass. You can't localize bass. You've just got big bass. It's just tremendous. So you would put this again in whichever. I assume most room correction systems allow you to do this. Audyssey does. Audyssey is basically exactly the same as Mini-DSP. You can import all of your EQs for the subwoofer, exactly like you can with Mini-DSP. And afterwards you create a low shelf, exactly as I've done in Mini-DSP. So Mini-DSP, like, you put your PEQs in here on the output, and then on the input you put the low shelf here, which is really nice. Now what I do as well is whatever I gain here, I put the negative in as well. The reason I do that is because I calibrated my system today, and I've seen this as well in the past, but and I listen to music pretty loud, especially some like bass music, like dubstep, drum and bass, anything with ultra heavy bass. I was noticing my gains here, because when you've got a signal playing through Mini-DSP, it actually shows you what the signal level is. And a lot of the times, the signal level was going to like 0 and -1. And if you know anything about digital volume, once you get to 0, there is headroom here. But once you get to 0, you're actually, if you went above 0, you're actually clipping, right? So my whole point was, look, I don't want to get near this. I don't want the system or a Mini-DSP or anything to sound stretched, because I was doing some tests with some music and putting the bass really loud. Once you start getting right up to this level, like 0 dB, I felt it just sounds stretched in Mini-DSP. I put a -8 to counter the gain here, and it just sounded so smooth. I was like, wow, it cleaned, it just sounds clean. Not stretched, not pushed beyond its means or anything like that. It just sounds good. Really, really good. So again, if you're boosting, I would always use a negative number. Now I know EQing flat, you're using, this is like my EQ, so you're using a lot of negative numbers here, right? Like that's a negative 17. However, my subs are super sensitive, so there could be like just insignificant bass coming from the mains, and my subs are turned on. They're not turning off like in the middle of a movie, or I know some subwoofers even, they would struggle if they're using like me here. I'm using like -17 here for an EQ. I've heard some subwoofers do not turn on, and they do not activate. So again, if there are settings on your sub, just make sure you're on the most sensitive settings to make sure these subs are turning on with this type of EQ that's happening. Thankfully, I don't have any issues with this, But if you do, what you could do is, because you're using Mini-DSP, you would obviously then be going through our receiver first. So what you could do is you could put the negative gain here, I'll call it, and you could put all the PEQs in here. But on the receiver side, you could boost it on the receiver side, plus 5 dB, at worst maybe plus 10 dB. I don't know how much that affects a receiver by putting the gain up like that. A receiver doesn't actually amplify the 0.1 channel. It just increases its gain, a signal gain. I'm not sure how much that plays in on actual sound quality. Again, whether you're pushing things beyond, again, maybe if digitally into 0 dB, I don't know. These are things you are going to have to work out, like if you don't have a sensitive sub and things like that. Thankfully, my receiver is 0 dB. I'm not pushing gains or anything like that. I'm using negative numbers here. I'm using negative numbers for my EQs, and my subs still turn on. My subs turn on, even turning on my Panasonic UB9000. I turn on the 4K player, and I heard my subs just turn on. That's how sensitive they are. So again, I am lucky that they have a setting like that. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think at least I hope I've gone over how I create a room curve for my system, how I deal with this roll-off, again, of localizing bass. It is definitely a problem. Why this doesn't have an issue though, why there's no issue here for the mains rolling into a sub, is because when a subwoofer rolls in, it's below this point. It's below this point. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually following this curve anyway, and rolling into the sub. And even at 80 hertz where the crossover is, I still believe the subwoofer's -6 dB below, and the mains are -6 below as well. But coupled, they create that volume together on the crossover where the sound should be. I think that's how it all works. At least I hope it does. I'm sure somebody's going to explain to me exactly how it works. So, but I do believe that is how it works, and this is why, even with this being flat here, because the main channel, that crossover for the mains, forget the subwoofer channel. This is the EQ, right? And the only way there's a roll-off happening is the crossover itself into the subwoofer, which is not flat. And again, this is why music and movies at 80 hertz with this set to 120 hertz on the low-pass filter is EQ'd in that way together, almost. Music sounds great, movies sound great. So just really quickly talk about a few movies, again, like Tenet, anything really Christopher Nolan, because Christopher Nolan does not roll off bass. Christopher Nolan, even on 4K Ultra HD, right, on home mixes, home video mixes, we'll call it, does not roll off bass. Most people, movies don't roll off bass when they're in the movie theater. They have a full 80 dB dynamic soundtrack. But when you mix for like home video, I'll call it, mixing essentially for a release at home, buying on disc or a stream is probably worse. It's definitely worse. They're not mixing now at 85 dB. They're mixing, they could be mixing at 80. I don't know exactly what they're mixing at, but they're not mixing with the same dynamics. It's a close, I forget what it's called, a a close system, like where the speakers are very close to. I can't remember. I can't remember what that's called. But they're mixing essentially in a smaller room in a smaller environment. And when for the home mix, Christopher Nolan movies, they have the theater mix. There's so much bass going into these movies. They're not getting rolled off like other movies. Like they hit 30, like Jurassic Park, for instance. Well, that's actually a mistake. Let's not talk about that, because the bass on that one rolls off at 40. But any other movie, any typical movie, again, hits their steam at 30, and then they'll actually, they will borderline go out of their way to start rolling off that, roll that off for a home video mix. And I wish they wouldn't do that. Can we get completely uncompressed 85 dB mixes at home, like a Christopher Nolan movie? I mean, his movies have absolutely shocking amounts of bass, but it's when needed, right? It's not all the time, but a movie like Tenet, the war scene at the end is borderline scary bass. It makes it more impactful to have this type of bass. So, yeah, I probably don't want to get talking about this for too long, because I don't want this video to just drag on with me talking about movies and how they sound. But once you do now get a response like this and things are taken care of, you're happy with your room curve, yeah, it really does sound gorgeous. The benefits, just really quick. The benefits of EQing to flat and then putting your room curves and things back in afterwards with Mini-DSP is so much better. Right now I'm using, an 8 dB rise, but in 2 years' time or 6 months' time, I come up with a brand new theory, right? A new theory of, oh, my room gain was not 8 dB, it was this. Or you EQ somebody else's system and they didn't like the bass. They either thought there was too much bass or there was too little bass. Well, you can just come in here and change this without changing the EQ. The hard work is done. My EQ was to flat, all right? Calibrated gorgeously. Again, within probably 1 dB, 1 to 2 dB at the most, in certain sections. Gorgeous, because this is my old calibration. I've EQ'd a new one since. So it gives you the freedom to change this. Whereas if you are locked in with this system, if it doesn't sound good, you have to re-EQ again, the whole thing again. And that is extremely aggravating. That was one I actually did here. Where is it? There. I did this one, and as you can see, it's raising. It was this one was 3 dB above what the roll-off should be. I put Tenet on, I put some music on, I could localize the bass. I was like, I have to change this quickly. It sounded bad. Bad if you don't like hearing that type of bass. I quickly went in, I did an EQ, I took care of this, I essentially just cut this off. I added it very quickly to Audyssey at the time, cut it, and it took care of the bass problem. So one benefit of this is you can keep stacking EQs, but if you keep stacking EQs, you are affecting the timing all the time, and it might not sound as tight. That's one benefit, again, really with Mini-DSP. With Mini-DSP, in one EQ, I can get all of my EQ work done, put the target curve in afterwards, and it sounds tight. Audyssey, I felt that the bass didn't sound quite as tight. And I think it's to do with the resolution of Mini-DSP's DSP capabilities. It allows for a much finer cues than Audyssey does. Audyssey has a Q limit of 20. That's high as it can go, and it doesn't have the granularity of detail either. It's so yeah. Before I start talking about all this and making the video even longer, I just want to appreciate you all watching, and I hope I taught you something today, or at least gave you something to think about in different ways to design a target curve, things to think about with roll-offs and things about actually being able to localize this. This should not be flat. The 6 dB roll-off is in place for a reason. So yeah, appreciate you watching. Have a great day, and yeah, bye.